for two. Kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two. Sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this, multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top end. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo!
What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 346 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I am your host, of course, Geoff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeoffLambert77. We are live here on the Going for Two Live podcast network every Friday night, usually at 10:30. We're here tonight at 11:30 because of my job. Of course, we're on Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, syndicated in all major podcast networks. If you're currently watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And I see the chat is already alive. We got Joe and Jared in the chat. What's up, fellas? Somebody's got their live on. Oh, there we go. I had a little bit of echo in my head for a minute. I'm here with my co-host, as always. We missed a week last week because I had a wedding to attend to, and Gerson was going to fill in for hosting, and then he had his job kind of getting away. So we missed last week, but what's up, Tim?
Oh, man, I'm so happy to be back. I told y'all before the show, I don't always say this, but I love this slate, man. I can't wait to get to it.
Good stuff. Also joining us tonight, Pedro from the DFS Masters Facebook group. He runs a great group over there. If you haven't checked out his Facebook group, definitely do that. What's up, Pedro?
Nothing much, man. What's up, fellas? Thanks for having me. Let's talk some plays and make some money.
Absolutely,
Yes,
absolutely. So real quick, Pedro, just give me a quick little rundown of what y'all do over at Masters. I mean, obviously it's DFS related, but y'all do a lot more than that.
Yeah, I mean, we started off as only DFS. As time has gone by, now we do sports betting. We do player props. Basically, we throw up a new thread daily per sport. And then we have our admins, we have our writers go in, we chat, we talk with people, post our best plays, and take it from there. Give you breaking news, trades, season-long advice, daily advice.
Good stuff.
Anything sports related.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. All right, guys, as always, today's show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Check out their best ball leagues, huge tournaments, private leagues, and they got pick'ems for every major sport. Use our promo code GF2 and get a deposit match up to $100. It's as simple as that. Use promo code GF2. Start drafting your best ball teams and do your pick'ems. And if you watch the Wednesday show, we do a pick'em of the week where we build a three-leg lineup, so to speak, of props. So check that out on Wednesday nights at 9:30 p.m. with me and Ryan. All right, let's get into the rewind.
The weekly rewind. Rewind.
All right, Tim. So we didn't actually have a show last week, but I'm sure we both still played DFS there. What's your one good, one bad for the week?
Yeah, the one good was Kyron Williams. I was all over him. I had him in like 70% of my allocations. I told you last week I really only like two running backs, Kyron Williams and CMC, and they both smashed. So yeah, my one bad was Tony Pollard, though, because I thought maybe I could get some exposure to him. I had him maybe about a third of my lineups, and he completely tanked. So
yeah, it's kind of disappointing too, because that was a game that he should have been good, and he definitely was not.
Yeah, the defense really did it all. So
yep,
it just happens that way. I still defend he was a good play.
Pedro, I know you said you didn't play last week, but you had a very good reason why you didn't play. Go ahead and tell us what happened last week.
No, I had to go to Vegas to watch a boxing event. Didn't get a chance to reserve my contest, and no DFS last week.
The one good was the boxing event in Vegas. The one bad,
yeah, the one good was Vegas. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a real good. We once actually did a show from Vegas.
Yep.
Where I had the strip in the background. It was sweet.
Let's do it.
All right, so my one good. So in my cash lineups last week, I hit on only 3 players in my cash lineup. Fortunately, those 3 players were AR, Anthony Richardson, Kyron Williams, we just mentioned, and Christian McCaffrey. And those 3 guys got me into cash on all my cash lineups. So AR5 was the lower owned of those 3 guys. So he helped me out a tremendous amount. So he's my one good. And my one bad, I said I'm giving him one more week, Mr. Javonte Williams, and then I'm giving up on him. And he disappointed me once again. I know it came down to an injury, but he wasn't looking good even before the injury. So Javonte Williams was my one bad. Almost killed my cash lineup, but ended up making it because of those three players. All right, let's just jump into the quarterbacks.
Let's talk quarterbacks.
All right, we'll kick it off right here at the top, Tim. What you got in your elite tier?
Yeah, I think you got to start at the top with Patrick Mahomes. This week, I think I mentioned it, I'm really happy about this week because I think there's a ton of value, a bunch of players I think that are underpriced. So if you do want to get up to Patrick Mahomes, I think you can. I don't think it's optimal. Like, I don't think he's somebody I would play in cash games, but his ceiling is, I think, unlike anyone other than the guy that the other three of us have. So I really like him this week in the Dome against Minnesota. I think he's got a realistic 35 type point ceiling. And he's got some kind of cheap stacking options that we'll talk about later.
Good stuff. Pedro, what do you got in your top tier here?
So I like Tua. He's 7,100. He gets the Giants. He's at home. He has all these weapons. I understand the Mahomes call, but I haven't played them yet this year, and his weapons just don't do it for me. I just don't see that 40-point game, 35-point game happening with these weapons. He has one 300-yard game this season. That's it. I understand the blowout, but even against the Jets, he wasn't really looking nice.
Yeah.
I understand.
I just feel like the Vikings make everybody look good.
Yeah.
Oh, the Vikings are terrible. Don't get me wrong. But man, I don't know. We thought Kadarius Toney was going to be that guy. He's just not him. So who does he have? He has Kelsey, and Kelsey's what, for 10-yard passes? I don't know, man. The other guy up top, I do like Jalen Hurts, 8K. And that's about it as far as top tier. I understand Tua is going to be chalky, so I'm not sure I'll get to him. But if I had to pay up for one guy, it's going to be Tua.
Yeah, I agree. I got Tua in my top as well at 7.1. I do have Hurts as just an alternative to those two guys. A little bit cheaper than Mahomes, a little bit more expensive than Tua, kind of in that middle range there. So I do think people will click on Mahomes because of the high, Vegas total, and people click on Tua because of the the price point and the game environment that he's in. I think they'll overlook Hurts. Hurts goes a little bit underowned, I think, at 8K versus the Rams. And obviously we know he's got the legs that he can obviously put up that nice floor, and then has the ceiling of of Mahomes type, or he can put up a huge passing game in addition to his legs as well. So at 8K, I think he's a pretty good play. And the thing with Mahomes is going to that, the real thing that I want to pay attention to this in the game is the Chiefs defense used to not be very good. So Mahomes had to do it all. So I'm curious to how this defense is going to match up with the Vikings. The Vikings got a very good offense, but if they slow the Vikings down a little bit and the Vikings only put up 21, 24 points, does Mahomes have to put up a 40-point game in order to sort of keep up with them? So I like Mahomes at 8.2. I think his price is down a little bit because of what we saw last week, but I think I like Hurts a little bit more, lower ownership. Let's move down into the mid-tier, Tim. What you got for one of your mid-tier guys?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Anthony Richardson. This was another guy we talked about. We played in cash last week. I know it's going to be a little harder to run on the Titans, but we've seen him throw the ball more than 30 times before, and I think that he's still going to be able to get those short touchdowns. We'll talk about it later, but I think Zach Moss is the person to avoid in this game. I'm going right back to him. 7K, I think, is kind of where his price is starting to hit the ceiling, until he drops one of those 40-point games. But I still think he's very much in play this week against the Titans because they're not really bringing anything.
Yeah, that's a good call. And Pedro, you don't have anybody in the mid tier here, but I want to ask this question that we have in the chat here. No love for Lamar in the top tier. You got any love for Lamar here?
Not for me, no. Not for me. Not against the Steelers on the road division game.
Yeah, I think if you look at history-wise, I think Lamar has struggled pretty much against the Steelers. So that's why I'm off on Lamar. But yeah, it's a great question there, Atkins. But yeah, I think I'm off on Lamar as well.
The total is too low for me.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Staying in the mid-tier for me, a guy that we talked about before the show that I like a lot, CJ Stroud at Atlanta, 6K. I think Atlanta is 27th DVOA versus the pass. Stroud has been putting up monster numbers. He's got some great weapons that can stack him with. You can go with Tank Dell or Nico Collins to stack him with. 6K is probably still a little too cheap. And just to go back to AR, there's one stat that I saw that's kind of crazy talking about AR that CJ Stroud, he's breaking all these rookie records and putting up all these monster points. And AR actually is only 6 fantasy points behind Stroud on the season, even though Stroud's missed. Even though AR's missed an entire game. So that goes to show you just how important those rushing numbers are for AR. But Stroud at 6K, I think, is still too cheap. He's throwing the ball over the field, got some great weapons, great matchup versus Atlanta. So I like him here in the mid tier. I also have Burrow in the 6.2 only because he's so cheap. I know Burrow has burned us. He burned us last week. We were all in on Burrow. Tim talked about him in one of our group chats. But at 6.2, he's worth the shot. He's playing against Arizona, who's 30th DVOA versus the pass. And they give up the 5th most points to quarterbacks. I'm not going to have a ton of exposure to Burrow, but he's worth a punt. Obviously, you stack him with Chase and hope they have their breakout game against Arizona. So at 6.2, he's way too cheap. Let's move down into the values here, Pedro. What do you got for some of your value quarterbacks?
So this is a tier I actually like. This is more than likely the route I'm going to go. So a few guys here I like. If you like that Miami game, Daniel Jones 5.8. If that offensive line can hold up. We saw it yesterday with Sam Howell. Miami jumps off to a quick 21-0 lead. He's going to have to throw. Sam Howell at second quarter yesterday had 1 point, finished with 30, 300-plus yards. So if he has to go out there and throw and try to play catch-up, I don't mind Daniel Jones. I don't mind Zach Wilson. He gets his weapon back. He gets Breece Hall back. I don't mind him. And the third call I had was Dobbs, 5,200.
Yeah.
I don't mind him at all. This is the tier that I'm looking at for this weekend, the 6K and below.
That's a good call on Daniel Jones. And the Giants have to see that Jones has no time. They're going to have to adjust that offense to find a way to get the ball out of his hands faster. There's a guy we'll talk about later on that I think benefits from that. Tim, what you got down in your value tier?
Yeah, so probably my favorite quarterback play on the slate is Matthew Stafford. People think that, Philly has some great defense, and they're pretty good against the run, but they're actually really not good against the pass at all. 26th against quarterback DVP, 20th in DVOA. He's so cheap, man. And now it looks like Cooper Kupp is going to play. So he's going to have his full squad with him at 5,600. I think that's just too cheap. If you play cash games, in my opinion, he is the cash game quarterback. And then I'm also going to have some exposure in tournaments. But I almost put him as my lock of the week. I like him that much.
Wow, that's saying a lot. And in Stafford, at 5.6 is pretty cheap. So he's getting Cooper Kupp back, and he already has Cooper Kupp 2.0 and Puka Nacua there as well. I'm curious to see how those two guys coexist at the same time. So, in my value tier, I had Dobbs as well versus Cincinnati 5.2. The guy just keeps putting up points. I think he's had at least 17 points in all 3 games. I think he had 20 something, the last game. He gets points with his legs. I think he has over 140 yards rushing on the season and a touchdown already. And he's looked really good. And I have a soft spot in my heart for Dobbs. As I said on the show multiple times, he won me a lot of money in preseason football a couple years ago. Him and James Washington against the Green Bay Packers won me about $7,000 in some preseason tournaments. So I love seeing Dobbs succeed because of that reason. And at 5.2 versus Cincinnati, a good matchup. I think he's definitely in play for sure. Tim, I want you to talk about the MILF Hunter a little bit there.
We have to talk about the MILF Hunter, a.k.a. Zach Wilson. Yeah, I mean, he actually looked alive in that game against the Chiefs last week. He's 4,900. And I think that's the big thing. Like, I'm saying, like, particularly in cash games, I'm going to spend the 700 and go to Stafford. But like in tournaments, we talk about this here in a minute, but you can do so many stacks with Zach Wilson and just play all of the top guys. And he's got a realistic 25-point ceiling at 4,900. I mean, Denver, no matter what stat you look at, is basically last. They're last in DVOA. They're last in EPA. They're last in DVP. Like, it's the perfect spot for him to go off and just, break the slate at 4,900.
Tim, I want to ask you as the Green Bay Packers fan too, how much do you think of Zach Wilson's game last week can be attributed to Aaron Rodgers being on the sideline?
I don't know. 0. I heard it's more likely that it was some of the peyote or something that Rodgers gave him in the pregame. So it's one of the two.
Good stuff. All right, let's get to the tight ends.
Did somebody say tight ends?
All right, Tim, I'll let you go first because the guy you have, obviously, he's pretty much on the top tier every single week that he's on the slate. Go ahead and talk about him real quick.
Yeah, your copy paste is Keenan Allen, and I feel like my copy paste is Travis Kelce. It's kind of he's been disappointing this year, and I think that's kind of why it's tough to pay 7,600 for him. The way he's performed, he really should be closer to 7K, but that's why you play him in this spot, right? This game is projected for 54 total. He could easily go over 60, and if he ends getting say 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, or even 80 yards and 2 touchdowns, there's no other tight end on this slate that can get close to that. Yeah. So I think that he's somebody who's GPP only, obviously, but I think that there's some builds where you can get to Kelce, and I think he's definitely viable.
Yeah, I agree. That breakout's coming here pretty soon, and someone said in the chat, blame Taylor Swift, and maybe that's the case. Let's see if she shows up.
Yeah, it is the issue.
There's a name there in the chat that Brandon D has, Laporta, and that's who you have in your top tier there, Pedro. Talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, that's my favorite tight end this weekend. 5K. We got the news today that St. Brown was downgraded, so there's a chance he doesn't play this weekend. Absolutely love that play. 5K, Laporta against Carolina. Yeah, I mean, the one game he scored this year, he put up 20. So we know the upside's there. Yeah, 84 yards and 1 touchdown. 5K, I'm all in on Laporta.
Yeah, 100%. Laporta is
Chat,
been a beast.
Yeah, Chat seems to like him as well.
Chat likes Laporta, yeah.
That price tag is sexy too at 5K. The upside that he has, that's
horrendous.
With Amon-Ra St. Brown out, potentially out. That's definitely I'm looking at as well. The guy I have in my top tier is the guy opposite Kelce, and that's TJ Hawkinson, 6.5. The Chiefs are 27th DUA versus the tight end. They give up the ninth most points to tight ends as well. Everyone knows that Jefferson's going to get the ball here, but I think Hawk is going to be able to work the middle of the field at 6.5. I think he's viable, again, because people are either going to go all the way up to Kelce or they're going to hit Laporta, which leaves Hawk sort of in the middle, in that middle tier where he might get not as much ownership. So Hawkinson at 6.5 is a guy I like. We'll move down into the mid-tier, and you both have the same mid-tier tight end. So, Pedro, you're the guest, so I'll let you take the mid-tier tight end here.
Yeah, Tyler Higbee, 4,100. I mean, Kupp is coming back. That'll spread the field a little bit. Just too cheap. I feel like, from now on, every tight end that we're going to mention is just way underpriced. 4,100, the game has got a 50 total against Philadelphia. I don't know what's not to like about it. Yeah. The guy's a target machine. 11 targets last week. So
100%. Anything you want to – okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's about it. That's like self-explanatory.
Definitely. Yeah. You want to add to that, Tim?
No, I was just going to say the stack with Stafford is under 10K.
Yeah.
Right, which is just incredible. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Philly's bad against tight ends too. Like it all just kind of stacks up. I think I love the Laporta play, but I also think Higbee's very viable.
Yeah. I like Higbee as well. I have Zach Ertz here at 3.5, and I'm calling him the flow chart play. I know Tim puts out the flow chart in the Roundtable Facebook group, and Cincinnati is the only team to give up a tight end 1 in all 4 games this season. So Ertz at 3.5. He got 10 targets last week. He's been kind of a target monster. Now I will say the flow chart, you got to dive a little bit deeper into that because tight ends been such a shit show this year. I actually went to look to see what tight ends got those top 12 games, and in week 1, it was Harrison Bryant who had 2 catches for 5 yards and a touchdown. Ended up at tight end 9 on the week, and then last week it was Josh Wiley who had 2 catches for 26 yards and a touchdown. And the pass was thrown by Derrick Henry. So take that with a grain of salt. But they are still the only team to give up tight end 1 to every team this year. So Ertz at 3.5. I think does some good things. You stack him with Josh Dobbs as well.
I think he's the cash game play at tight end. If you play cash, he gets too many targets per dollar.
Agreed.
Who's that? Ertz?
Ertz.
Yeah, Ertz.
All right, let's move down into the value tier. And Pedro, I'm gonna go to you first because they're the 2 tight ends that I was kind of bouncing back and forth in my head of which one I liked more. And you went with the one guy I didn't go with. So talk about you.
Before you do, let me tell you, I put that guy and erased him about 4 times. And then I saw you put him, so I left him off.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to defend this guy because every week he's like in a smash spot and he just lets us down. But now this price point, I don't know if it's a trap. I don't know what to do with this, honestly. But Kyle Pitts, 3,300. against the Texans at home, man, that's going to be tough to avoid. But again, the guy, when he came into the league, they were calling him generational talent.
Yeah.
And he just has not put it together.
Yep.
4 targets, 2 catches, 21 yards, 9 targets, 5 catches, 41 yards. His season high is that 5 receptions, 41 yards for 8 points.
Yeah.
But we know the upside is there. I don't know what it is with that guy. But aside from Pitts, the second name that I like, same tier, 3,200 is Conklin for the New York Jets, going back to the Zach Wilson stack. You see Tony Wilson said no on Pitts. So, yeah, those are the 2 guys down at the bottom that I like is Pitts and Tiger, 3,200.
Nice.
And, again, Denver struggles against the tight end.
Definitely. You have the other guy there, Tim. Talk about him.
Yeah, I put Jonnu just so we could talk about the fact that he's got more targets than Kyle Pitts, and he's cheaper.
Yeah.
Like, I almost want to play Jonnu and just save the $400 at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, but, like, this is one of those weeks where I think you're going to pay up at tight end. Or I say pay up, I mean Ertz, Higbee, Laporta. Like, not necessarily Kelsey, but I don't think you need to go to Jonnu personally.
Yeah. Agreed. I think this is just us filling the sheet out. Basically, we got to have a value, and that's the guy in the value tier.
Yeah.
The one guy I put in the value tier, and it's because I play a lot of dynasty football, and this guy was a big dynasty player, and we hoped that he had a good landing spot. He did not, unfortunately. Darnell Washington, with the Muth is loose. He is going to be out this week. Washington gets the minimum salary of 2.5. And he is a monster. I think he's like 6'6", 250. And we just need a touchdown from this guy, right? We just need him to catch a touchdown. Just one.
This is just an extra sit call is all this is.
Yeah, exactly.
You put 2 sit calls on the sheet. This is the other one.
This is the other one. And if you're going to punt, to a minimum salary. The tight end position is the way to do it. So Gerson, who's in the chat, I see was a big proponent of always punting tight end. And I think this is the guy, if you want to punt tight end, just punt it all the way down to 2.5 and play Darnell Washington. All right, let's get to the running backs.
It's time for running backs. Running backs.
All right, Tim, go ahead and kick us off here with your top guy.
Yeah, I got to talk about Bijan, man. When I first looked at this slate, you know how we all open up the slate for the first time and we look, okay, who's on this slate? Saw Bijan Robinson against Houston Texans. And then I looked more into it. It is my number 1 running back matchup in the week in terms of offensive versus defensive line. So at 7,700, this is his week to absolutely smash. I love the matchup at home against the Texans. I know he's going to be popular, and that kind of takes a little bit of the shine off, but I'm still going to be heavily exposed to him.
Yeah, I love Bijan as well.
I even put in my thread starter in the DFS roundtable, is he this week's CMC?
Yeah.
Because I think he's got that kind of, I don't know about 50-point ceiling, but he's got a real shot at a ceiling week this week.
Yeah, that's a good call. And Gerson just said, how the hell is he not lock of the week? He was almost my lock of the week. He was this close to being my lock of the week. He definitely could be the lock of the week, but I agree. Bijan's a 100% great play. Pedro, me and you have the same top tier guy. We got a drop for this guy, and Gerson's in the chat, and he's going to love it because he's the one that created this drop. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the drop and then let you talk about him. All right, of course, King Henry at 7.5. Go ahead and give me your thoughts on King Henry.
Yeah, I'm not too in love with this tier, the 7K and above tier. For this week, I prefer the 6.6K and under running backs. But King Henry, I mean, he looked like his old self last week. I put up 27 DK points, 122 yards, 1 touchdown. Now he get the Colts. If I'm not mistaken, we can look up his history against his team, but I feel like anytime he plays his team, he just goes crazy against them.
Yeah, I actually have that in my notes.
Okay, I thought so, yeah.
Yeah, he crushes it over the last couple of years. He's averaging 27 DK points versus the Colts. And
correct.
He's over 100 yards as well. Against the rest of the league, he's only averaging 21 points comparatively. So 6 points more against the Colts than he is anybody else.
And also, I feel like if this matchup was deeper into the season, he would be, I don't know, 9K opposed to 7.5 this weekend. Just seemed way too cheap.
Agreed.
For his upside. We know he can get 120, 140, and 2 touchdowns.
Yep, and he seemed to get loose last week, so hopefully he can continue that this week. Good call. All right, let's move down into the mid-tier, Tim. And me and you, it's funny because I was writing my guys down, and I realized that we had almost the same amount of guys, almost the same guys in the mid-tier that I did. But go ahead and pick one of your guys you like here.
Yeah, it actually hurts me to say this because this guy ran all over my Packers last week, but it's David Montgomery, man. His role on the Lions right now is so secure. He's looking at 20-plus touches every week, and the way that you beat the Carolina Panthers is on the ground. They've given up more touchdowns running back than any other team. I mean, and with what's his name, St. Brown doubtful, like this is how they're going to win this game, right? They're going to run the ball and play defense. So I think David Montgomery is just such a smash spot this week. He was the guy I considered putting as my lock of the week. But spoiler alert, I didn't want all three of us to have our lock of the week as running back.
Yes. Yep, definitely. And in Demont, we've talked in this show a lot. We always joke, home golf versus road golf. And this is road golf. So road golf means we're going to hand the ball off to Demont the whole time. So, yeah, I definitely love that call for sure. Pedro, what you
golf? It's at home.
Is it at home? I thought he was on the road this week.
No, it's at Detroit.
Oh, my bad. All right, let's go. Pedro, what you got for your mid-tier?
Yeah, I have David Montgomery is there as well. 32 carries last week. Who else in the league is really getting that?
It's like 1990s carries right there.
It is.
And this is,
trust me, I agonized over every one of those carries last week as he just ran it down our fucking throats.
We saw Williams do it for them last year. What he had 18 touchdowns or whatnot, all 1 yard line.
You hard runs, you're right.
Yeah, they drafted Gibbs, but it seems like they want to go to that power football where they just run. So 32 touches, man, you can't get over that. 6,600, you gotta play him.
Yeah.
I actually have one more stat I wanted to add on Montgomery. If you guys see, every week we do a pass rate over expectation. This week I did a red zone pass rate over expectation. Lions are last in the league. They run the ball more than any other team in the league inside the red zone.
Wow, that's impressive because that's a good call for Demont because he's getting those carries. We know Gibbs ain't getting them.
Yeah.
But that's all I've got for quote mid-tier. The other two guys I like are both under 6K, so I'm going to pass it off to you, Geoff, and then I'll come back.
All right, sounds good. I'll go ahead and hit my
lock it in.
This is the guy I ultimately landed on with my lock of the week, Alvin Kamara at New England 6.3. I mean, this guy, I know it wasn't very efficient. It was quite inefficient actually last week, having 14 targets, 13 catches for 33 yards. I think the previous low for a player getting 13 catches was like 74 yards. He had 33 yards. But you know what? It's PPR. We don't care.
Yeah.
Give me those 13 points. I'll take it all day. So I think it's going to be very similar this week. Derek Carr's arm is not ready to be throwing the ball down the field. He's going to check it down a million times, and I'm okay with that. I'll take those cheap points, those PPR points for Kamara at 6.3. And if he can maybe, get maybe 50 yards this week, it'll be even better. So Alvin Kamara is my lock of the week. Tim will go back through again. Give us another one of your mid-tier guys.
Yeah, so it's pretty clear. I think in my mind, it's a 3 running back week, at least in cash. You can obviously switch it up in tournaments, but there are just so many good running back plays this week. Neither of you guys had Joe Mixon, so I'll talk about Joe Mixon. He's on the road at the Cardinals. This year, obviously, you beat the Cardinals on the ground. Most teams have not really thrown against this team. I think with Higgins out, some people think they're going to lean on Jamar Chase, which is possible. I think they're going to lean on Joe Mixon and just kind of run it down their throat, kind of like CMC did last week. So 6,400, I think he's kind of a chalk play, but I think he's still going to be in a really good spot.
Yeah.
Can we trust that offense?
Yeah.
Can we trust him? No, I don't know. But I also feel like, I'm not saying he's going to get, 4 or 5 touchdowns or whatever it was last week, but
that's my issue.
Yeah. It's tough to trust that offense. I had Burrow as one of my quarterbacks because they can't be that bad, right? They got so many weapons. We keep saying that every week, though, and it keeps happening. So it's tough.
They've scored 20 points once this year.
Yeah.
Once.
I got one more.
But I get it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I get the mix and play.
I got one more guy in the mid-tier, and I'll just mention him, and we'll get down to the value tier. James Conner at Cincinnati, 5.8. Cincinnati's 30th DVOA versus the run. James Conner's getting all the usage. There's literally nobody else in that backfield getting any touches. And he's been pretty good. I think the one team he didn't get double-digit points against was my 49ers. So I think against this Cincinnati team, you can definitely do that at home. So 5.8 is a pretty good price for James Conner.
Yeah, I think we got to talk about Achane, though, because we all had him, right?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, and you know what? I thought we already talked about him, but you're right. You want to go ahead and kick off Achane here, Tim?
Yeah, I was just going to say, did we see the changing of the guard last week, right, where he took over for Raheem Mostert? I guess that's the real question. At 6,100, he's in the same range as some of these other guys we've talked about. And I've seen some people projecting him all over, from, 12 touches to 20 touches. You know what I mean? So I don't know that he's a cash play, but I definitely think he's somebody you want exposure in tournaments, because if he has taken over this thing and he's going to see, 2/3 of the snaps against the Giants and you beat them, you want to beat them on the ground. I mean, he could have another 30-point week and then he's a smash at 6,100.
Yeah, that's a good call. I love Achane as well. All right, we'll move down into the value tier, and that's where Pedro has his
Lock it in.
And a peek behind the curtain. We actually, me and Pedro both had this guy as our lock of the week, but Pedro's the guest, so I changed mine for him. But go ahead and take it away, Pedro.
Thank you, sir. Breece Hall, New York Jets, 5,400. We've got the news earlier this week. They're taking the training wheels off him. They're going to let him loose, and he gets a dream matchup. I don't think there could have been a better matchup for this guy at Denver. I mean, if you saw the guy play football before the injury, you know what we're going to get from him or what to expect from him. And even this year, the few carries that he's got, he's averaging 6 yards per carry.
Yeah.
Even last week, 6 attempts for 56 yards, 10 attempts for 127. So the upside is there. GPP, cash game, whatever you want to call it. He is a lock and load for me.
Yeah, I think you start your lineup with Breece Hall. Basically, it's Breece Hall and then build from there.
Breece Hall.
Locking in your cash games, locking into your GPPs. I think he's too cheap.
It's a trap. I don't know, Tony. We'll see, but that's the Jets' only hope at winning. It's unleash Breece Hall, man. Let him go crazy.
100%. Tim, you have a guy that's sort of like the pivot off of Breece Hall. If you're staying in that range, what you got for your value here?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with. I just put Pacheco on there because I think you have to talk about him. We talked about this is one of the the highest scoring games, and we've seen that they can be beat through the run. Right? I'll watch that Thursday night game where DeAndre Swift just ran right through him. So I think there's a good chance that the Chiefs lean on the run a bit here. Like Pedro was talking about it earlier in the show, right? Who does Mahomes have? Right. Well, we've shown they might actually trust this guy a little bit more. So I love the Hall call. I think he's an absolute smash play. But I do like Pacheco as kind of a similar price pivot.
Yeah. The only other guy
to add to that, real quick. Sorry about that, Geoff. Pacheco's his attempts have gone up every week this year.
Every week, yeah.
8, 12, 15, and 20 last week. 20, 115, and 1 touchdown. So I want to say that's the feature back. That's the guy in Kansas City. And if you're not stacking that game, if you're not playing Mahomes and Kelsey, that's one way to get different and still get exposure to that game.
Yep. I like that call from Brian in the chat. You play Pacheco and Hawkinson. That's a great secondary stack that nobody's going to really be on, and it gives you a ton of leverage. I love it.
Correct. Yep.
Good stuff. All right. So the only other guy I wanted to mention is Dameon Pierce, 5.3. Again, he's a pivot off of the more chalkier plays, and only because he's getting a ton of usage. He's got, I think, 24 carries last week. Not quite where he's at David Montgomery stage, but you're getting that many carries in offense. Not very efficient right now. Not scoring a ton of touchdowns, but I think the potential is there if you're getting that much usage. So Pierce is a pivot off of Breece Hall at 5.3 for me. All right, let's get to the receivers.
And now, wide receivers.
And we'll hit the infamous double drop here as Tim got his
Lock it in.
All right, Tim, take it away.
Yeah, so I said I didn't want to do 3 running backs. The great thing about this slate is I think that there's a good amount of value to where you can pay up at wide receiver. And I think there's 2 clear plays at the top that you kind of have to decide between. So I'm going with Tyreek Hill. And one of the reasons is one of the stats that I had this week. Since being traded to the Miami Dolphins, he has averaged 30 He's averaged 30 points against.
You all right there? You can take a break? All right. Pedro, why don't you take one of these top tier guys here, one of your other guys?
No, I mean, to add to that, did you guys watch that Monday Night Football? Man, the Giants, they just can't tackle. I don't know.
Terrible.
I don't know who's going to be on him or who's going to try to contain him or what they're going to do. But I feel like he's going to, we're going to get one of those Tyreek Hill games where first quarter he's got 4 for 80 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Type of game. So, yeah, I love him up top. Also like JJ. Jettas, if you're going to stack that game, if you're going back to that Chiefs game, that's an easy run back. You can run either Hawkinson or you can go JJ if you can get to him.
Yeah.
Other than that,
he hasn't disappointed one time all season. Like he's been
I did.
The kid is a stud.
I started coughing really hard, guys. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
You're good. Floor is yours, bro.
Yeah, I just think Tyreek's an absolute smash spot. Maybe take this as the Tim died a little bit play of the week, the extra sit call of the week. But yeah, this feels like it kind of did week 1, where if you feel like if you don't have Tyreek, like you're gonna miss out.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right, so we mentioned JJ, we mentioned Tyreek. I will mention Jamar Chase at 7.9. Again, this offense hard to trust. Burrow hard to trust. It's got to happen sooner, though, and I think at 7.9, Jamar Chase is just too cheap. I was actually on Jamar Chase last week, hoping that would be the breakout.
Yeah, me too.
Kind of burned me a little bit, but he's even cheaper this week, 7.9. So a better matchup against Arizona. Again, I mentioned earlier, 30th DVOA versus the pass. If it's going to happen, I think it's going to happen this week. So yeah. I want to be on the front side of that. So I think 7.9 is too cheap. And the only other guy I had, and I put a question mark. Are y'all playing Cup? Anybody playing Cup? Are you into Cup?
I can't do it. Not at 8.6. I don't care if Sean McVay says he won't be on a snap count. I think he'll be on a snap count.
I agree.
So
I agree.
I don't think I love Stafford. I told you he's my favorite quarterback play. I'm really concerned about stacking him with anybody but Higbee. We didn't talk about Tutu, but we'll talk about. But I'm really concerned. I think you can play Puka, and I actually was put the question marks on Puka. But there's a good chance they split snaps here, and neither one of them are viable. Yeah, I think I agree with Joe. I think he's on decoy duty.
Yeah, could be right. You have one more guy there, Pedro, in your top tier, Mr. AJB.
Yeah, this dude killed it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Hurts earlier. I feel like he'll get no ownership. So that's a good GPP play. Most guys would go up to Jettas or Tyreek. So he's the odd man out. And as we've seen before, he can break a slate. He can go crazy and don't sleep. That game has got a 50.5 point total, and he's on the road. The Rams are getting healthy. So if the Rams are going to put up a fight, that game can very easily shoot out. And Tim likes Stafford and, the Rams offense. So
absolutely,
just a under the radar play.
Yeah, he's definitely my favorite bring back in my Stafford stacks, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we'll move down into the mid-tier, and I'll kick it off here with a guy that I love, and I loved him last week as sort of a post-bust game. He had a bust game 2 weeks ago. Everyone forgot about him, but Mr. Nico Collins at Atlanta, 5.6. He is, I think, going to be a legit receiver 1 for the rest of his career. Him and Stroud, he just looks that good. He's looked really good through the first couple games of the season. Kind of came out of nowhere. We weren't really sure who the receiver was going to be in this offense. It is definitely Nico Collins. He is the man. Atlanta right now is 27th DVOA versus the pass. The one thing that we talked about pre-show that we're a little worried about is the pace of the Atlanta Falcons slowing this game down to the point where that these guys may not be as playable. But I think Nico at 5.6 is still way too cheap for me. So I think I'll have him in a bunch of my lineups as well. Tim, what you got for your mids?
Yeah, talk about a guy that's let me down, and I'm going to go back to him, and that's Zay Flowers. I feel like this is one of those spots where it's he's got to do it here right now. Pittsburgh has been so bad against wide receivers this year. I think I've let him, like I said, he's burned me before. I think it was 2 weeks ago, but he's in such a good spot right here at 5,500. I just feel like this is a smash spot. We had some people talking about Lamar. I don't really know if I like Lamar, but I like some pieces of this game, and probably the one the most I like is Zay Flowers.
Yeah, I love it. What about you, Pedro? What you got for your mid-tier?
So, I mean, if you guys have been paying attention from the start, it's all the Jets for me this weekend. So Garrett Wilson, man, 6K against Denver. We've seen what other teams have done to Denver. He had 14 targets last week. $6K, just too cheap. Again, they get Brees Hall back this week, so they should have teams can't just play back on them now. They have to, or at least stack the box. They have to. So Brees Hall, that's my favorite mid-tier guy this week.
Yeah, you mean Garrett Wilson? You mean
Garrett Wilson? I'm sorry,
but Brees Hall is also in that.
That's how much I love Brees Hall.
That's how much he loves Brees Hall. Yeah.
And a receiver too, if you can. Yeah, I think Wilson had 12, 13 targets last week. That's
14.
It was 14, yeah.
9 catches. Yeah.
You're getting 14 targets.
The funny thing is, I'm a Patriots fan, so I can't stand the Jets. The Jets are never in play for me, but this week everything just lines up to be Jets.
So it's funny you say that because people who watch the show know obviously I'm a huge Packer fan, and it kills me to recommend Vikings. But several times on this show, I've recommended Vikings, and it's made me money. So I'm 100% on board with that.
Whenever Tim mentions a Vikings stack, you have to play it that week because it's going to happen. It always seems to be that way. Love it. All right, so the effort of time here, I'm going to just mention the last few guys we had in there. We had Hopkins at 5.7 and Hollywood Brown at 5K are two guys that we didn't talk about, but we do like them in the mid-tier. Let's move down into the value tier. And Tim, you kick this off here for us.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about kind of the chalk play of the week, I think, is Wan'Dale Robinson, 3K. We haven't talked about this in a while, Geoff, but the famous Monday night misprice, right, that we still get early in the season where his role increased after the slate came out. He's projected, depending on where you look, for between 6 and 8 targets at 3K. We talked about earlier that Zach Ertz rated number 1 for me in terms of targets per dollar. Wan'Dale Robinson is number 2. So I think if you're building a cash lineup, it's probably starting with those two guys and then going from there. So I don't expect like a huge game out of him, but I think he's going to get you enough to get you there in your cash games, tournaments. I'll leave that to you.
All right, and I want to answer Matt's question here. He's chiming in with a season-long question, but I want to just kind of answer his question here. But we do have the season-long show on Wednesday nights. So he's talking Dynasty here. Would y'all trade Javonte, Higgins, Miles Sanders, and Dotson for Breeze, Godwin in a 24-second and third? And I think I'm taking that. I know Higgins is there, but I think Higgins and Godwin are pretty close, but I love Breeze.
I would say if it's a dynasty question and one side gets Brees, give me the Brees side.
Yeah, that's 100%. I think Miles Sanders is going to be close to being done, after a year. Javonte's
really struggling to stay healthy, man. Yeah. Same Higgins.
Yeah, and then the 2 picks pushed over the edge. So, yeah, to answer your question, Matt, I think I'm taking that. So, yeah, good question. Check us out on Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m., me and Ryan, where we run our Dynasty show on that night. All right, let's get back to DFS here, Pedro. What you got for your value? What's your favorite value here?
I see Rondale Moore popping up in optimizers and whatnot. He's only 3,200 against Arizona this weekend. Also, Rice. If you're stacking the Chiefs and you need some savings, Rashid Rice, 3,600. Played 32 out of 70 snaps last week against the Jets. 5 catches for 32 yards. He's popping up in optimizers, 3,200. But me personally, I want to stay in that mid-tier. I believe with the savings that we have at running back, I'm already saving on my quarterback. I don't think I need to go all the way down at wide receiver this week.
Agreed. I'll put 2 guys here that are in the same game that I think are values. We already talked about Dobbs. I mentioned Dobbs in our value tier at the beginning, but there's 2 receivers that he has, Marquise Brown at 5K and Michael Wilson at 3.7, I think are both in play as values. I think Brown had 10 targets last week. He's had 10 targets now twice this season at 5K. He's just too good. And then Michael Wilson at 3.7, we're not going to find too many guys that are below 4,000 that are getting the usage in the touchdowns. I think he has 3 touchdowns through the season now at 3.7. He's 6.
Thanks, Geoff.
What was that? Oh man, I didn't see that. I didn't see you had him all the way down there. My bad. Forget about Michael Wilson. I'll take that back. I pulled a Gerson on that one. I'll mention Tank Dell as well at Atlanta, 4.8. I think that whole offense in Houston is in play as well.
Hey, I have one last thing on Rashee Rice. So not only is he number 1 on the team in targets, but he's also number 1 in terms of end zone targets. So his snap counts have increased and he's getting the looks. So I really love that play as well. I'm going to have a lot of them.
Good stat. All right, let's get to the defenses.
Defense.
All right, Pedro, I know you're new to the show, but Tim is the defense guru. He always goes first here because he always seems to
Let's
nail
go.
Yeah, I think this is a week you kind of punt defense, right? I don't think there's one obvious spot, and I think there's a lot of plays you want to pay up for. So I think in cash, you're either playing the Titans at 24 or the Panthers at 22, right? I think that's just kind of how the builds go. I think if I have a preference, it's the Titans because I think they have a better pass rush than the Panthers do. But either way, I think you're paying all the way down. In GPPs, we talked about Burrow's really struggled. I like the Cardinals at 2,800. And then talk about somebody who struggled, Mac Jones / Bailey Zappi. So I like the Saints coming in. Who dat against the Patriots?
There we go. Garrett's in the chat. He's a Saints fan. Love it. What do you got for your defenses, Pedro?
So I like the Patriots at 3,100. They get the Saints, but this Saints offense, it's not there. I mean,
Check down Central.
They've scored 20 points once this year. They scored 3, 15, 17, and 20. They've hit 20 points one time this year. Hard not to like Miami. We just seen this New York Giants O-line give up, 11 sacks, I want to say, on Monday Night Football. They're pricey, 3,600, but hard not to like them. Other than that, the Titans you mentioned down below 2,400. They get Indianapolis, Richardson, and that's about it. You know, for me, defense. It's what can I get? What can I fit? I fill in everything else, and then
it's kind of where I'm at.
Defense.
Yep. I have the Steelers at 2.7 versus Baltimore only because we mentioned Lamar Jackson struggles. He is prone to take sacks. He is prone to turn the ball over. Steelers defense, despite what they showed last week, has been pretty good this season at 2.7. And then I had the Jets at Denver. We mentioned how good the Jets defense has been, and Russell Wilson, has turned the ball over in the past, and this offense, the defense hasn't looked great. So at 3.1, I think the Jets are in play as well. All right, time for our stacks.
Going4two.com's weekly stack report.
Pedro, we'll let you go first, but I think we all know what your stack is.
It's not pretty, but I am going to go with the New York Jets. I am going to go with Wilson, Breece Hall, and Wilson. Gary Wilson.
Wilson to Wilson.
Wilson to Wilson with a little bit of Breece mixed in there.
Breece, so.
I love it.
That
Tim,
is my stack of the week.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tua. I love that game. I think it's a good chance that it goes well above the total. So I'm going to go Tua to Achane and Tyreek Hill and bringing it back with Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, I like that stack. You actually stole that stack from me because that's the one I was going to go with originally, and then I saw you had it. So I got
Geoff,
left.
Do you have ownership yet? I'm sorry. I'm wondering how old Tua is going to be. That stack.
Let me here. I can actually pull it up real quick. Let me.
I was gonna say I'm pulling it up too.
Yeah, go ahead and pull it up
That's
while I
what
talk
I'm
about my stack.
Yeah.
My stack is sort of an ugly stack because we talked about can we trust this offense this whole show, and I'm going to trust them at least in a couple lineups. But Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and then you could pick either Ertz as your comeback or Hollywood Brown, or if you want to go with the other guy that I can't mention because Tim has him as his sick call, but you can use him as well. It's a risky thing. I know the offense does not look good. But I just can't give up on them yet. They've looked so good in the past. I'm gonna give them one more week. If they can do it against any team, it'll be against the Cardinals. So give me the Burrow stack this week. What you got for ownership, Tim? You got it pulled up yet?
Yeah, I was gonna say I have Tua around 14%. Yeah, depending on where you look, it's somewhere between like 11 and 14%.
That's not bad. I was expecting much higher.
Yeah, looks like I have him around 15% on my projection. So yeah, right in that same range. All right, let's get to our sick calls.
And now, the sick call of the week.
All right, Tim, I'll let you go first. I stole your thunder. I didn't see you had him as your sick call, but go ahead and talk about him now.
Yeah, it's Michael Wilson. I couldn't believe when I pulled up early ownership and it said that he was at 3%. If you guys look at my thread every week that I do early ownership value, early values, he came in for me early in the week at 3,700. He had 2 red zone targets last week. Both of them turned into touchdowns. It seems like this is the guy Dobbs goes to when he gets into the red zone. He's going to use Hollywood Brown down the field and then Wilson when he gets in there. So at 3,700, I think he's too cheap. I love Rice, but I also really think Michael Wilson is a great play. And kind of maybe a little lower ownership than you're going to see there.
Yep,
so
I love it.
If he really comes in at 3%, though, I'm going to have a ton.
Yeah, that's a really low percentage at that price point for sure. Pedro, what you got for your sick call?
Broken record here, but right back to the Jets. Tyler Conklin, 3,200. I am seeing a sub 3% for him for the week.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm gonna start thinking you're a Jets fan the way you're picking these Jets.
Yeah.
I think the only Patriot you mentioned all night was their defense, I believe.
that offense is bad, man.
Yeah, it's tough.
All right, so my sick call is pretty sick because this guy hasn't really done a whole lot all year, but he did play the most snaps of all receivers on the Chiefs last week. Did absolutely nothing with them, but just be on the field with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Watson at 3.4. He's going to be lower than 1% owned. Just being on the field with Patrick Mahomes, it can turn into something. He is a deep ball threat, so if he can break loose on just one play, he gets a 60-yard touchdown. He pays off that 3.4 salary. So I will take Justin Watson as my sick call. And just to recap the last sick call, it wasn't week 4, it was week 3 because we didn't do a show last week. I had Cole Turner at 2.7. He busted. Devontae Parker at 3.8 is what Tim had. He busted. And Braxton Berrios is what Jared had, and he also busted. So we hit on none of our sick calls for the first time all year. So that's that on the sick calls. But this week, I like our chances. I like Michael Wilson a lot. He probably would have been I had him as a value, so he would have been definitely one of my better calls too. So I like it.
And to add to that Justin Wilson call, you can never go wrong with Justin Watson. I'm sorry, you can never go wrong with the highest total on the slate. So
absolutely, and it just takes one play really. Yep.
And it's a dome game, so those are always better. So
all right, fellas, that wraps the podcast up. Thanks again for everybody in the chat today. The chat was live. I love it. I love to see it. We'll go around the room real quick. If you want to give us your Twitter handle or if you want to plug, obviously, your Facebook group, Pedro. We'll go to you first, man.
DFS Masters. Simple as that. DFS space Masters on Facebook. Check us out if you're not already in our group. Appreciate you having me. Tim, thank you. Good luck on Sunday, fellas. And I'll see you guys around.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tim.
Yeah, Geoff and I are both old school DFS masters. Some of the guys that made up the DFS roundtable all met in DFS masters. So it's definitely the OG group. Pedro, thanks for being on the show, man. You absolutely killed it. Every week, as I said, in the DFS roundtable, I do a thread where I gather all the best info from around the internet and put it available for you in one place. So I got your O-line matchups, your wide receiver cornerback matchups, your pace matchups, everything in that thread. So hop in there.
Good stuff. As always, guys, you can follow me on Twitter at Geoff Lambert77. And I want to plug my ownership that I always put out in my Facebook group, the DraftKings group. I think between the three of us here, we all have the biggest DFS groups on Facebook.
We do.
Masters, DraftKings group, and the roundtable. So I put out my ownership today. And also check out Micah's article on goingfor2.com. He came on the show a few weeks ago and he really crushed it. He actually took down a showdown slate last night that he sent me. His lineup looked really good. So he knows his stuff as well. His article just came out recently on goingfor2.com. So make sure you check that out as well. For Tim, for Pedro, I'm Geoff. We will see y'all next week and good luck.